Breaking news, there was an announcement for everyone to see. Someone with blue eyes opened their eyes. It was 8 in the evening, and the announcement went out that the S-rank mage Lee Seojin had been killed while on a mission. Oh, this was terrible news. The person could not believe the news that he was watching. Lee Seojin was not supposed to die. That particular S-rank mage was fighting the evil dragon that appeared in downtown Seoul, Kruas, when he was caught up in the incident. The 25-year-old Lee Seojin debuted as a mage in the year 2034, and he was a beloved mage, known to have solved countless incidents. He had earned the love and adoration of the public, so this was indeed very tragic news. Memorial altars for Lee Seojin would be set up all over the country, and people who heard of his death were currently suffering in deep shock. The boy had to turn off the television because the terrible news was getting to him. The boy stared in disbelief because this could not be happening right now. The protagonist was not supposed to die at this point in the story. This had to be some kind of sick joke. Unfortunately, it was a joke that was not even slightly funny. The Lee Seojin that they had just shown on the news was a 25-year-old genius mage. He had amazing monster-slaying talents, cutting down multiple beasts at once with his exceptional skill. He was the young hero that everyone in this era was watching. However, what mattered even more than that was the fact that his old classmate also happened to be the main character of the novel that his world is based on. It is called The Modern Wizard. That awe-inspiring mage was the protagonist. If everything had followed the original plot, it was supposed to end in a happy ending, and he believed that he would be able to return to his original world. However, that huge dragon had suddenly appeared in the dungeon, and it had cut off the normal life that the main character had planned for. He could not understand why the protagonist would die at this point in the story. Even scarier was trying to figure out what would happen to this world now that the protagonist had jumped ship. That dude was supposed to at least stick around long enough to keep everyone alive. The fact that he was gone now was troubling. The main character feared what would happen to the story. He had been looking forward to seeing his friends again once the novel ended, but with the protagonist gone, could there even be an ending? The main character recalled how easily and casually he had laughed with his friends back in the past. One of them said that if they possessed a background extra in a novel, then they would either hog all the lucky chances, or they would not touch them at all. He asked which side the others were on as they laughed over mugs of beer. The beautiful lady beside him giggled and said that the obvious path was to go for it. The brunette sighed and said there was no way that he would do that. For instance, if they stuck their nose into the story's plotline, then the main character could end up dying and everything would fall apart. His friend laughed, asking if the brunette would truly never step up in the story ever. The brown-haired boy insisted that they would have to go through every hardship imaginable if they did that. That was not an easy thing to suffer through. Besides, the brunette was not confident that he could work as hard as the main character. All of that effort to grow stronger and fight more demons sounded like something that would tire him out. Even the blonde had to admit that was true. It seemed they were coming to an agreement. Even when he was right, he had to say it in such an annoying way, as expected of Kim Seonwoo. The friends happily raised their glasses in a toast and drank down. That was when the brunette got the message that he had won some kind of award. The friend beside him was excited and asked what event it was. Apparently, it was some kind of weird message from the author of Modern Wizard, and Seonwoo had won a very unfortunate event. This was a travel ticket to a very special place, and he could choose to claim it or not. That was interesting. The boy excitedly showed his friends this lucky win, and even his friends celebrated that he was going on a trip. This sounded like so much fun. It was insane for him to cash out from so much luck. They asked when he had even entered something like that. Excitedly, the boy clicked yes as his friends tried to guess where he would be sent to. They were about to get the shock of their lives. They were thinking the boy would get to go abroad, and they happily cheered and drank in his honor after he hit the accept button. Just like that, 7 years ago, the atmosphere around him began to get brighter, and he found himself transported into the middle of a magic circle as a young teen. Some of the teachers were yelling that students should not climb on top of the magic circle while it was being drawn. Well, our boy had now fallen into the novel that he had loved reading, The Modern Wizard. Fortunately, it was a book he loved, or that situation would have gotten ugly pretty fast. Still, he could not believe that his favorite novel could not even follow the script that it had designed for itself, or at least the path the author had created. Since the original plot was not allowed to change, the boy had only been acting outside of the main story. He had ignored all the major characters and had made sure not to draw any attention to himself. Now, he wondered where it had all gone wrong. If everything was supposed to unfold according to plan thanks to his minimal interference, then how on earth was the protagonist dead? Suddenly, the television in front of him started to glitch. He was sure that he had turned that off. It seemed the glowing picture box had a life of its own. Leaning forward, the main character wondered what on earth was happening now. He waggled the screen a bit, trying to see if the television was just having an average malfunction issue. However, he was soon surprised by a sudden loud noise and the universe breaking apart in front of him. Now that was terrifying. Anyone who looked out the window and saw the sky falling apart would naturally be terrified. The main character looked outside and was even more horrified to see that the people out there were legit, just melting away like they were no more than an illusion. Of course, the death of the protagonist meant the death of the world. Now that the axis that the world spun around was gone, then so were the extras created just to support his story. The poor victim of the travel ticket was horrified and screamed, wondering what was happening and why. He was powerless and had no understanding of what he was seeing. Quite fortunately, an error message popped up to explain everything to him. See, the problem was that Lee Sujin had died, and now all the main scenarios were considered to have failed. Since the scenario could not proceed, the world would be reset. Now this was terrifying news. The boy was sweating as he saw the world around him start to shatter and crack, everything rearranging itself like a resetting game, except that he was not an element of the game. His eyes widened as he began to crack too, and he was in for a very painful and earth-shattering surprise. This poor kid also immediately reset. Everything went dark for a bit of a while. In the darkness, a voice called out to wake up the student. More voices called out, calling for the student to wake. He had to wake now, after all, they were at the school. The powerful voice took on a shout, and our dude yelled right back as he was startled awake from the worst dream that he had ever had. The bus driver was concerned by this reaction, and he apologized quickly, but he had expected the student to wake up and get off the bus by now. The teen blinked and nervously stood, apologizing for causing such a ruckus. Meanwhile, the main character's head was reeling. The bus driver had just called him a student. Come to think of it, he had definitely been in his room when the world fell apart, but now he was on the bus of a disgruntled bus driver. It had felt like the world ended. The brunette was still a little shaky on his feet when he descended the bus, trying to stay sharp even though his legs felt like jelly. He wondered if he had suffered some kind of dream. The light in his eyes was so bright, and he winced, raising his hand to block off the light. This place was the Grand School, a rather nostalgic sight. Posted on the board outside was a congratulatory message, congratulating students on their admission to the Korea Magic Academy class of 2032. This was the school that he had graduated from in the game. Something was off, the year was 2032. The realization made the main character gasp. That was 7 years ago. They had gone back 7 years in the past. He touched his chest just to make sure, but it was just as he feared. He had small hands and a small chest, and he was a teenager once again. The main character had regressed, a nice and special skill, and he had gone back 7 years. The announcement continued to ring out to all the students entering the Korea Magic Academy. They were wished a warm welcome. The entrance and opening ceremony will begin shortly. Students should please take their seats. Our dude was expected to repeat high school. The true embodiment of madness. He felt like he was going to lose his mind. Everything was exactly the same as it had been those 7 years ago. Since things had come to this, he had no choice but to accept it. At any rate, it was much better than dying indefinitely. Now that he had gone back to the past, he had to endure everything that he had been through before. It really sucked the excitement out of school, but maybe he could get better marks this time. Of course, our dude had a much more pressing question right now. He needed to know why Lee Sojin had died. According to the original story, there was absolutely no reason for him to die. The protagonist was strong and talented. Crew is going berserk was exactly what was supposed to happen in the story at that time, and after a brutal fight, Lee Sojin was supposed to defeat it. If so, then there had to be some other reason behind the hero's death. The main character thought about it, but he really had no idea since he had stayed as far away from the main character as possible. How could he know when he didn't get close? Suddenly, the boy looked around as they sat in class. His new fear was the protagonist somehow dying again in this life. If that happened, then he might get regressed to the past once again. Seonwoo had already suffered through high school twice, and he was not dying to do it a second time either. There was also the fear that the world would just end and not come back. Nothing was certain, but there was one thing that was clear. Lee Sojin must not die. It was an unacceptable result. This time for sure, the main character could not just sit back. This time, he had to play as part of the story if he ever wanted to get back to his original world. Then he had to stop Lee Sojin's death and see this novel through to its ending. To do that, it was time for our guy to start getting close to the main characters. Of course, the first one he targeted was a girl. Our dude was laser-focused. It was like he had just been waiting for the opportunity to chase down pretty girls. He watched as one of the main characters sat beside him, and then he waved at her with the brightest smile that he could muster. He figured that the best course of action would be to start growing close to the main characters as soon as possible. Yuara, the second year, ranked second in the story. She was one of the people that he needed to start getting close to right now, or so he thought. Unfortunately, our Navi regressor had just targeted the cold, serious type who immediately asked if he knew her. She did not even wait for him to answer, scoffing that she did not recall meeting him for him to act so familiar with her. Right? He knew a lot about her, but she knew next to nothing about him, so this kind of reaction was expected. The boy waved lightly, still caught between shock and the half-assed friendly gesture. Before he could take back his greeting, The girl asked if he had something to say to him. It seemed she was the Sunder type, as cold and as frosty as ice, but hopefully she had a bit of an agreeable side somewhere. He admitted that he did not have anything to say. He was just saying hi. Instantly, she dismissed him and told him to look somewhere else. It seemed that starting with the nearest pretty main was not the best of decisions after all. He was making her uncomfortable. Why that rude little child? Our dude was quickly realizing that this situation was not going to be easy at all. They were all seated in class in neat little rows, and each grade representative was asked to come up to the stage. The grade representatives then stepped forward. There were 3 of them. Immediately, everyone recognized the main character and clapped at the presence that he had. Some of the students had even heard that the boy had trained under Chairman Kim Jinchul. His talent had to be on a whole other level. This was Leo Seojin of the 2nd year in rank 1. Despite being a student, the protagonist of the story was already soaring and famous. That was as expected. Modern Wizard was the kind of power fantasy novel where the main character did everything. They celebrated and clapped for the freshman top student, some of them thinking that she was really pretty. She did look like a happy saint. The pretty and flower girl turned out to be the kind that was calculated in all her gestures. Even that little smile was calculated. Her goal was to build connections at school after all. That senior had also been ranked the first for 3 years straight. He did not look that impressive, but that was still an awe-inspiring feat. In the face of all of these really amazing characters, it was understandable why our main character had thought it would be fine for him to just enjoy his background. He did not know much about the hero of the 3rd year, but the guy seemed pretty impressive. Though even in the original novel, the guy had barely had any screen time. Now they would have the student oath. All the present student representatives raised their hands and took the oath. However, for some reason, the girl beside our dude was vibrating. He had to glance her way just to check if everything was okay with her. Everything was not okay. Her fist was clenched. She had a whole doom and gloom presence going on, and her feet were tapping with so much rage. Only a few seconds after meeting her, he had at least found someone whom she hated quite as passionately as him. Now that was really something. The boy wondered if he should try scoring some points with one of the protagonists now that she was emotional. For some really dumb reason, his choice of words was telling her that it was too bad for her. She had come in 2nd place to the protagonist. The girl was heated and asked if that little insignificant rat was talking to her right now. He really needed to learn how to know his place. Of course, he doubled down and said yeah, he was indeed talking to little Miss Stick in the mud. Now she wanted to know what he meant by saying that it was too bad. The boy sighed. Honestly, he thought that the girl was surely much better than those 2 up there. The girl with the dark hair was a snob, but she was not taking any empty compliments from a stranger who was very clearly just trying to score points. The girl scoffed and asked what he knew anyway, and if he was trying to be funny. If he had ever seen any of those 3 use magic, then he would not be confidently spouting the brain-dead nonsense that he was telling her right now. So much for cheering her up. He had just redirected her anger towards him now. The boy admitted that he'd maybe seen their magic, and that just made her even more heated. He had no ground to judge their talent when he did not even know how much power they had. However, the boy doubled down on his nonsense. It was either go big or go home, and he refused to retreat. The brunette made the claim that he could tell just by looking at her. Apparently, he had really good instincts, and he beamed with a self-confidence that was backed up by his aura alone. That faker was only digging himself deeper and deeper into a very ugly pit. Now she was extra heated and asked if he was messing with her right now. It was time for our guy to pick the go-home option. He could not believe that it did not work, so he thought to try a different topic. It probably would be more sensible if he tried not to talk at all. He then asked the girl if she had been worrying about her future lately. Well, that much was true, and she wondered how he knew that. The boy was moving like a charlatan fortune teller. He had disturbed her peace enough times that he finally decided to check out his name. He was Kim Seonwoo, and she was going to remember his name. That sounded like a threat. Then she added that he should not dare to open his mouth and spout any more nonsense today. She was quite tired of him. All of our dude's efforts had been painfully in vain. And now the protagonist girl was stomping away from him. That was definitely not the reaction that he had been going for when he had started the conversation. He had already messed up, and he had just started his mission. The Magic Academy's new semester began with an evaluation test on the first day that determined everyone's ranking. It was an initiation ritual where students revealed themselves in front of the entire student body. Some of the students were already panicking about the test. After all, some of them didn't really have the skills and all that. Meanwhile, our dude was smirking and calling those kids cute. His goal, his new goal anyway, was to rank in the top 10 of the second year. In his previous life, he had gotten offers to be promoted to B rank several times, but he had ended up staying at C rank though. It would be embarrassing if she could not at least hit average against these kids. However, he was starting from the beginning of this story, so he would not be a slouch. The main was so excited to show off his professional skills at the evaluation, and his number one hater was already hating his guts from a distance. Our dude had not even successfully made friends, but he had succeeded in gaining a hater. Hilarious. Of course, the top 3 students of each year were exceptional. Little Miss Polite Smile shot out her magical power with a shout and fogged off the running maniacs. One by one, those Earth-looking golems got shot down. The gathered students watched the exam go down, praising anyone who showed exceptional talent. They also watched in awe as the talent from the first years proved that she was a top ranker. Her skills were insane and incredible. Yes, it was none other than the girl who was praised at the assembly and was happy to show off her obvious exception. The second years were up for testing next, and they had to come up when their names were called. The blazing fury that was our dude's number one hater, of course, took the opportunity to show off her exceptional skills. She blasted her power forward and obliterated the targets before her. The other students gaped in awe, thinking surely a girl that powerful could not be the same age as they were. It was insane as she had professional level flame. That fire was impressive, but of course, since they shared schools with Leo Sojin, the hero boy overpowered the light of those flames. Then again, Uara was legendary too. The hero boy stepped up, and within seconds, he had zoomed to the targets. Those little stone creatures tried to run, but in an instant, they were cut down and defeated, sliced to pieces in an instant. With the golems fallen, the hero beamed with satisfaction. The boy sure was impressive, so impressive that the heated girl could not stand him. Our dude had sense now, so he was not going to try to offer her any comfort, when she clearly did not need it. The brunette thought that Uara was pretty good, too, even though she did not care about his opinion. It just so happened that Lee Seojin earlier was basically on par with a professional active mage. The girl had always been in first place, but that had been snatched by the pillar of natural talent that just happened to shine brighter than hers. Her frustration was understandable. Then, it was time for the second-year Class A, Kim Seon-woo, to show off his power. The boy was told to come up and display in front of all the other students. The boy stood with a proud smile now that it was his turn to play. The others gathered to watch wondered who Kim Seon-woo was. The lady had been in charge of last year's first years, but she did not really remember the name. A man smiled because he remembered. The boy was in their class, but he did not have much of a presence, so it made sense if people did not remember him. Looking at last year's records, the boy had a talent for reinforcement magic. Reinforcement was great, but the boy had come out to fight empty-handed. That was curious. It looked like the boy had switched to manifestation magic along the way. Well, sometimes they have students like that. Now, our main character stood before the golem dummies and prepared for his evaluation. He stretched out his hand and a portal opened up in the palm of his hand. Because of course it did. The ones who specialized in what they loved rather than what they were good at. The boy was more ordinary than he had expected. However, a lady at the back recognized the boy before her. It was not that she recognized his face, but she recognized the magic swirling in his hand. That child was using the compression manifestation technique. The first stage of manifestation magic was, of course, materialization. Compressing the materialized mana slowed a person to finally control the next stage, projection. That advanced technique was also called the compression manifestation technique. It was a technique that only veteran mages would use. Both the hero and the protagonist girl stared in awe as the boy used that magic now. It made no sense for a second year to be able to use a technique like that. However, this second year also happened to be a regressor, and he could not wait to wow them. With a bright smile, the boy fired out a blast of something right at the golems, and it shot out in a large boom, flowing around the standing mannequins into something that wowed the class in a way that was different from what was expected. Everyone was speechless, and for a moment, there was silence in the class. Then rang out the painful mocking sound of laughter. It seemed there had been a collapse of what he had tried to summon due to mana exhaustion. The students laughed because he could not even use his own powers. There was no point to materialization if he could not even project. Those awful jerks. Our poor dude was already going through a lot, but now he realized that he was well and truly in trouble. He was just wondering what the heck was going on with his abilities when multiple system windows popped up at once. The boy stared in shock and then horror, wondering why it was opening now. There was a very tired sigh, and our dude sat sulking in his room, wondering why the window had opened so belatedly. The last time he had opened it was at this time of the day. Something had changed with his power, and our dude Seon-woo needed to understand what had gone wrong. Back then, multiple windows had opened at the same time, informing him that outsiders' benefits had been unlocked. The main scenario had now begun. The windows also communicated that the second time around achievement had been unlocked, and he was going to receive a 3,000-point reward. He had also achieved the Talent of the Clown award, as if he wanted anything to do with that nonsense. However, the Talent of the Clown somehow achieved way more awards than regressing. He got 5,000 points for being laughed at. Now, 232 people remembered his face as the class idiot. They laughed at him, booed at him, and told him to get off the stage while the system gifted him a 1,000-point reward. The system was cruel. However, for some reason, the protagonist of the story was now interested in him. It was hilarious that this even happened for the worst possible reason, but our main character got 1,000 extra points for that one, too. In fact, 4 main characters had taken notice of him, and he received 1,000 points for each of the characters that had noticed him. Our guy had wanted to make an introduction. It was not a proper one, but it did get him noticed by the important people, and that was necessary. In such a very short but very humiliating time, our dude had made 10,000 points. However, to use any of these points, the outsider's benefits had to be unlocked. That was such a bummer. At least he had an idea of what the outsider's benefits included. This magical point-driven system has apparently been reserved for special privileges alone. So basically, only Xianwu could use these points. The achievement system is now active, but the talent he'd achieved had been cut off for some reason. The brunette pondered his new situation. Points were earned by stacking achievements through the system. He could also get points as he became more well-known. The points shop was one of the best things about the outsider's benefits. He could literally use points to buy traits, skills, or items. It was a totally overpowering setting. Having all of these points was great and all, however, our dude had been labeled the class clown on his first day at school. He had legit only gathered all these points because he'd turned into a circus performer. Plus, calling it the talent of the clown was kind of harsh. Back then, when he had attempted to use that large range and impressive attack, our loser had completely forgotten that he did not have enough mana to use such high-grade skills just yet. Honestly, he had never been this much in the spotlight in his life. Even if he had made so many points, he was not thrilled about it. The important thing was knowing how strong he was now. The boy called up the system to check his stats. The window popped up and informed him that Kim Xianwu, owner of 10,000 points, had good health, alright strength, okay mana, average speed, good reflect, and an average dexterity. He was not maxing out in any skills, but at least he was not garbage level. Still, this kind of sucked after all the points he had dumped in. His stats had gotten reset after all of his work, and now he needed to raise them all over again. Then, the boy realized something. In this life, he got to reallocate his stats. The window explained that in this system, there was enhancement, manifestation, support, and summoning. These were the 4 branches of magic here. Enhancement was for boosting weapons on the body, close combat magic basically, so those mages needed more health. Manifestation was where a person could cast actual spells, the classic mage vibe. Then, summoning and support were, well, for bringing things out and backing others up. For the record, our dude had totally chosen manifestation as his main skill on purpose. He figured that if he was going to get a skill, he would prefer something nice and flashy. He was laughing at the situation now, but it was not very funny considering how things were going right now. Since he was in manifestation, he would have to start by maxing out his mana so that he could actually use his chosen power. The statue's window popped up, and our man was informed that another 50 people just been added to his circle of influence. How wonderful! News about him was already spreading like wildfire for all the wrong reasons, but that was good. He could use this popularity to max out properly when he finally acquired some actual good skills. Xianwu was starting to understand that just that one silly moment was racking in so many points. This was such a huge payout that he almost did not mind being the class clown at all. Actually, it was crazily amazing. Now, 400 people remembered his face, and he got a 2,000 point reward. 400 people were insane. He would never have a normal school life now. Well, he'd had to kiss that goodbye anyway, since he'd decided to save the protagonist. That was still an overwhelmingly ridiculous number. It felt like even more people knew him than the whole school body. Someone probably recorded him or something. There had been all of those guests on the balcony. Our dude instantly whipped out his phone just to check what was going on in the Korea Magic Academy website. Just as he feared, someone had uploaded the second year's last place test video. So many people were dragging him in the comments section. Bro had never been more clowned in his life. Some people were even asking how he managed to get into the school. This was so unfair. Xianwu had never imagined the day that his test video would blow up like this. It was embarrassing, but the points were pretty nice. Since he had come this far, he might as well cash out from the attention, and now our guy was wondering if there was a way for him to get even more attention and points. Suddenly, his eyes shone as he came up with a pretty cool idea. With this, he would really pull all of the attention to himself. He would finally be able to buy the thing that he had always wanted after cashing it in. The next day, people were still whispering about the class clown. Some of the students stared in awe and asked if that guy was truly him. The video from yesterday looked just like him, so that likely was the guy they were looking for. Someone with shame and lots to lose would probably hide their face after becoming the class disgrace, but not Xianwu. He had money to make, and he would make it in the most shameless way possible. He needed even more people to keep talking about him as he paraded himself before them without fear. All night, he had played up the incident for attention, and it had paid off. Now his failed video was trending with over 1,000 views. Lots of people had a lot of criticism about his pathetic academy performance, even judging the academy scandal. Bro even went as far as calling himself an S-rank mage at the shocking scandal situation. Thanks to all of the hate that the video got, he made another 5,000 points. Racking up hate like that sure felt great. Then, the boy walked into class that morning, acting all cute and everything as he stepped inside. All of his classmates were of course waiting for him and all eyes were on him. Someone even outright pointed at him. It was a blonde. The bro looked like every stereotype of a bully that usually featured in these kinds of stories. However, surprisingly, the boy came over to cuddle with the brunette, laughing loudly about how hilarious yesterday had been. After the boy came out, everyone could no longer stop laughing. The other kids were in high spirits too, and they kept asking how the boy had run out of mana like that. His family had to have money, or he would never have been able to get into this school. It was funny that they thought that, considering his involvement in this school was a total unfortunate accident in his life. Well, the main character at least recognized yet another of the protagonists. The blonde, his name was Park In-won, and in the novel, this dude was the resident loon in the beginning. It was never good to get involved with someone like that, so our dude would just not get involved and keep quiet around him. Unfortunately for the main character, the blonde now had his eyes fixed on him, and he grinned. From now on, he would be calling the boy a blockhead, and from now on, whenever he called, the boy would come running. Otherwise, it would be tough to survive in a school like this. However, a voice dismissed In-won's bullying immediately. Of course, it was none other than the star of the second-year students. The glorious protagonist stepped forward, and he scolded the blonde, telling him not to bully others. The blonde scoffed in annoyance at the dark-haired hero, the genius that the world was watching, Lee Seojin. Now that genius wanted to play hero even inside the classroom. Naturally, good guys made fake losers like the blonde feel sick, because he could not comprehend being an actual kind person. Regular guys like him just had to go along with whatever the hero wanted. The hero spoke back in a warning tone to Park In-won. At any rate, the bully knew better than to push his luck, and he walked away from the hero of the second year, taking his stupid goons with him. With those guys gone, our dude was finally free. The hero asked if he was okay. He was such a cute, nice guy. Our dude was grateful for the support. Without even trying, he had gotten the attention of the person that he needed to protect the most. Now, the hero looked at him, recognizing the boy as the class clown who had debuted yesterday. The clown tried to assure the hero that he was fine after all. He had really cashed out thanks to all of that attention and laughs. He then figured that he should at least have some shame. Normal people would have shame about things like this. So, he sighed and whimpered that he just had to accept it since that was how things were. That video was everywhere already, so he had to accept his fate. The hero reassured him, telling the clown not to worry about it too much. The person who had spread that video on purpose was in the wrong. Yeah, Seonwoo had sort of helped them spread it, too, so he was hardly one to talk about people who were in the wrong. At any rate, the hero wished him a great day and was about to bolt. However, our guy could not let a good opportunity go just like that. Instantly, he latched onto Lee Seojin, and he started mumbling as he tried to figure out the correct way to make his request. See, he needed to stay as close to the protagonist as possible to keep the boy from dying. So, our main brightened up with a sparkly smile as he asked about the semester's dungeon class. He wanted to team up with that hero for the dungeon class. That was a cute offer, but he was kind of a liability. The hero had no idea what to tell him and asked why the boy was asking him. Well, with the sweetest expression that he could muster, Seonwoo explained that it was because it would be really good for the hero too. The hero considered the pros and cons of taking dead weight like the class clown into his team. After a moment of thought, he hit the poor guy with a bolt of instant rejection like a shy Japanese girl rejecting a romantic letter. It turned out that he had never really thought of Seonwoo as a teammate. However, fortunately, our guy was the kind who did not back down when he made up his mind about something, which was why he had successfully done an entire run-through of the game without ever interfering in the main character's life. There were two things that the hero needed to know before he made the rejection official. Alright, the hero agreed to hear him out, and it was time for our guy to market himself for all that he was worth. The first thing that the hero needed to know was that he was dead last in the entire second year. Yeah, that was not really news. Everyone knew that our dude was garbage, and honestly, that should not even be a talking point in this conversation. The hero was stunned by the boy's shameless audacity. He could at least pretend that he had some level of self-respect. The hero asked if this was really his reason because our dude was really making it hard to buy into the case. The main character explained that everyone knew that every group test had an adjustment score. This meant that if the top student in school teamed up with the very last place like him, then the hero's score would surely come out higher. Well, the good boy had not expected for the class clown to be pushing for this level of self-sabotage. His words did make sense, but the risk was too big considering that the guy beside him had shown no skill whatsoever. It felt like he would only be a burden in a place like the dungeons. The second reason was sure to make the hero agree. Yuara, the second best in their class, had already picked two low-ranked students for her own team. Clearly, she was thinking about the score balance as well. As the hero knew, the girl specialized in some wide area of magic. Even with 2 low rankers, she would manage just fine in the dungeon. This was a statement that even the protagonist accepted as true. Third, because it turned out that there was a surprise third reason, even if our dude had said that there were only 2. The boy beamed and then happily pointed to himself. He was the third reason. For someone in last place, he was still a pretty decent fighter. Well, there was no actual combat proof to back that up, but he had been about to use high-grade summoning magic, which was the only thing he had going for him, considering the wild stunt that he had tried to pull. The hero could not help but laugh at this whole display. The protagonist was such a sweet and jolly guy that finding motivation to protect him was going to be so effortless. This class clown was really seriously funny. He had seen his potential right from his debut. Alright, since the boy had amused him so much, the hero agreed to team up. However, he also had one condition because he was a nice guy that actually cared about his teammates. The protagonist smiled and said that he would pick the remaining teammate. With the high chances of him picking other main characters, that was a highly acceptable part of the deal. The hero was still sweet enough to check with the class clown and ask if he minded. Our boy did not mind at all, and he shook hands with the character Lee Seojin, who had now taken a deep interest in him. Our dude gained 2,000 points as a reward. He was so happy to have gotten this far. Alright, so now it was back to serious topics like class and study. The origin of magic goes back to the 14th century. Back then, it was divided into 2 branches, not the 4 that they have now. However, it did not take long for that solid 2-branch system of magic to collapse. Now, the teacher paused to see if anyone could tell her the reason. Our boy surprisingly raised up his hand. Of course, no one was expecting much from the class clown, but he'd done this entire class before, so he knew the answer quite easily. The 2 magic systems broke down because of Bloodsword, the first enhancement type mage to appear in the 18th century. Xianwu might have been a background character B2. He had done his homework well, surprisingly the teacher and the students. The teacher congratulated him on a good job. For manifestation-centric medieval mages of the time, Bloodsword's appearance was a huge shock. Manifestation mages back then couldn't even stand up to Bloodsword. From that turning point, research into manifestation magic exploded. The teacher continued to give an important lecture about the history of magic, while our dude listened on with a bored look on his face. Even for someone like Lee Seojin, classical magical theory and complex formulas were kinda hard. However, that was not the case for him. This was because of the outsider's benefits that had been bestowed on him. It fed him all of the basic info on the world, so when it came to written subjects, he was way more confident than anyone in class. Happily, the boy used his cheat skill to take down notes with joy. The other students in the back started to whisper and call him the class Hermione. He had gone from class clown to basically the class no, it all in just the span of a day. They even giggled that there was no point in his listening so hard in class if he was still the last place student. This pissed off the brunette. It was one thing for those guys to mock him for his mistake, but now they were calling him a bookworm. If they were that jealous of his skill, then they should go ahead and answer questions in class too. Well, the class ended, and it was time for everyone to enjoy their lunch break. Our dude had not really made a lot of friends, so he sort of lingered as most of the students filed out of class. He was just figuring out what step to take next when someone walked over and called out to Kim Seonwoo. That was him, so our dude turned to see who it was. It was the sweet hero who grinned that they were a team now, so they should eat together. That was so cool. They went and got their trays of food, and they walked together in the cafeteria to find a nice place to eat. Honestly, the hero was so jolly and smelly he was quite an easy person to like. As they searched for a place to eat, an excited boy waved over for Seojin to come and sit beside him. That dude was Shin Youngjin. The hero happily headed over to that guy, and they both laughed and teased each other. So, for some background, Shin Youngjin was one of the main characters in this world, and he was Lee Seojin's best friend. If all of the top rankers teamed up, their scores tanked, so it looked like most of them had split up this time. The Shin guy then noticed our brunette hanging around. The boy beamed, saying hello to Kim Seonwoo. Of course, he had recognized him on sight since everyone had seen that stupid video. Getting points was one thing, dealing with the aftermath of all that attention was another. Still, our guy took his seat, and the best friend happily asked when the loser suddenly became so close with the protagonist. The hero explained that it had just happened earlier, and they would be going into the dungeon together the day after tomorrow. The best friend had never heard anything crazier in his entire life. He was so shocked that he nearly stopped smiling. Bro had to slide right up to the hero's ear to whisper if he was that confident that he would get first place even without the last place buff. If they were that strong, then there was no need to carry this deadweight with them into the dungeon. The hero sighed and explained that Yura looked like she was out for blood. The best friend was surprised that she was a motivation point. Apparently, the second place hero was not playing around with the battle for first place, and she had put 2 bottom rankers in her team. That made the best friend flinch. That girl really was not playing around with how much she wanted to win. At any rate, they had already decided that Seonwoo would join the team, so they should just eat for now. The best friend agreed that he had been starving anyway. Ardu did not particularly appreciate the way the entire conversation had been had about him, but excluding him, but okay. They continued to eat together, and the gossip around them grew. Students were talking about the person who posted in the forest of the great sage. Seo Yuna, the poster, perfect girl for the first-year class, had been staring in their direction when her classmate called her attention. The girl was surprised and quickly dismissed the concern. She insisted that it was nothing. However, the first-year fairy was still curious. She had no idea how the class clown had suddenly gotten close to the second-year hero. Later that day, a bunch of the students were training in a little center with dummies and other practice tools. This time, our dude was going to have to practice his magic so that he would not become an inconvenience to the protagonist who had been so kind as to take him on. He would work with the amount of mana that he could control right now. Carefully, he generated that power in his hands, preparing to manifest. Slowly, the blue portal opened up in his hand just as before, and magic began to bubble in his hold. Now that he had a decent amount of mana, he controlled his project, and then controlled, raising his hand at the nearby dummy. This time, he actually managed to hit the target, and the other students who had been watching were kind of impressed. It was not something top tier, but it was not the worst attack that they'd ever seen. The boy was doing better than they had thought. He could totally hear them gossiping, and they did not even have the decency to gossip at his back properly. He could totally hear what they were saying. Well, that did not matter as much because he was finally making progress. Before regressing, he used points to buy stats, and he had happily bought whatever he wanted while living his own jolly life by himself on the sidelines. However, he eventually got a warning that the more he bought, the more the cost of buying things would ramp up, so he had to spend a bit wisely. Base stats went up in price by 10 points for every 10 purchases. Our dude considered that situation. It was the same logic as how level ups got harder in games once a player was on a high level. In the long run, instead of dumping points straight into stats, it was better to use traits for items that boosted mana growth and could build stats over time. Our dude decided to use the search function. He opened a window and searched around for the skill that he wanted to learn. He needed that one trait that showed up mid-novel right now, since he had increased the difficulty level on his life by teaming up with the protagonist. Finally, he found the Blessing of Great Nature, which was a skill that absorbed mana from nature. Now this was about to be excellent. When training mana, our dude would be able to gain mana depending on the environment. He could gain up to 150% of additional mana, and his mana recovery speed would increase by 50%. That was a whole promising bargain. He scanned through the passive effects to be sure that it was what he wanted and everything lined up. Then, the boy looked at the wristwatch that he had on his wrist. The returner's wristwatch was the kind of equipment that boosted health and mana regeneration by 200%. Bro was just buying cheat codes left and right. In this life, he sold and bought skills, trading lesser skills to gain even greater skills. He could sell traits to earn points too, but it was such a shame to let some amazing items go. Like the Master Chef skill that he had sold to buy the watch. He would really miss being able to cook that well. However, thanks to buying the Blessing of Great Nature and the returner's wristwatch, his starting point was way better than before the regression. Suddenly, his phone began to ring. Now this was odd because bro had very few friends, so he couldn't imagine who was calling him right now. He picked up the phone and stared in awe at the screen, wondering what he was looking at. This was a group chat for some reason. Jung Jinte had invited Leo Seojun, Kim Seonwoo, Yoon Hae-young, and Sheon Jaek to the chat. Jung Jinte happily told everyone to do their best for the next 2 months, and Hae-young happily agreed. A whole group chat. Now this was curious to the class clown. Apart from Yoon Hae-young, he didn't really recognize the members of this group chat. He wondered if they were all somehow low rankers. Yoo Hae-young was the kind of girl who would become an important character later on, but she had not realized her own ability yet, so right now, she shouldn't matter much. Anyway, it would make it easier if all of these low rankers just said what their speciality was. He already knew a few, but he was not sure about the others. Jian was in support of the sub-speciality of manifestation. Yoo Hae-yeon was in manifestation with the attribute office and the subspecialty of support. Jinta was in enhancement, with the sub-speciality in manifestation, but he sucked at it, apparently. Yeah, it was definitely a team of low rankers. Our dude also admitted that he was in manifestation with no elements since he was still at a beginner level, and all. The jerk Ji-yeon laughed that there was no one at the school who did not know the class clown's speciality was manifestation. The boy growled because he had just been trying to be nice and to make sure that everyone was on the same page. There was no need to be blatantly rude by bringing up his failures. He was well aware of them. In that case, it would be the best bet to put Seojun at the center, and the rest of them would focus on supporting him. If they were aiming for first place, they had to do better than Yuera's team. First things first, he needed to find out who she had put on her team. So the training continued as everyone prepared for the dungeon raid. It was very important to get ready in order to score the best in the evaluation. As they trained together, Some of them had training guides advising them on whether they were focusing too much on control and neglecting projection. They needed to put a bit more power into their mana and then release it faster. The girl followed the advice and gathered the energy in the palm of her hand. With a whoosh of her hand, she released the great blast and it swung, taking down a huge load of enemies before her. The people who gathered and watched were amazed by that level of firepower. They were truly in awe of a genius, and watching her was amazing to them. This person was really skilled, and anyone could see the obvious natural talent. Then again, maybe it was because she was still young, and the boy was still a bit rough around the edges. Her mana control could use some work, but exceptional talent was still amazing to see. Then, the teacher turned around in awe to see someone else training on the grounds. It was that one clown from the manifestation exam. Almost anyone would be able to recognize him. And her eyes widened when he saw him shoot a blast to obliterate the target in front of him. That was not bad at all. It surprised her, especially since most people assumed that kid was just a failure. The boy was beyond excited about his growing success, too. It was kind of cute. Back then, the young clown had gotten so hung up on materialization that he could not even manage a proper projection. Now, with the bare minimum mana that he had, he was being sure to balance two skills, managing both projection and materialization. He was even pulling off perfect projection and control. Figuring out his own weak points at that age was no small feat. The lady was impressed. She could not help but smile as she watched the children working hard at training and growing around her. After some time passed, the special lessons came to an end, and the happy lady thanked everyone for trying their hardest in the training. They had all done pretty good work. The students all thanked the teacher for the hard work that she had put in for them as well. It was much appreciated. All of that training had really helped them to blow off some steam. Honestly, this was what class should feel like. It seemed most of the students preferred blowing things up with magic rather than sitting in a class and actually learning. With that being done, most of the students were going to rest. As the students were leaving, the student Kim Seonwoo was called back before he left. The boy had worked pretty hard in class, and she wanted to know if he had been keeping up with training lately. The boy admitted that he had been squeezing in some training every once in a while. Then, she asked how his mana training was going as well. He was doing extraordinarily well with it. He was not about to admit that he had been high-key cheating with that one. And he was just buying some extra mana off the market and borrowing another half of it from nature. The boy was a bit hesitant, since the teacher had definitely noticed that his mana pool was lacking for his current level. The boy admitted that he was definitely growing it. Well, there was no rush, and the teacher assured him that he was doing well overall. In fact, his mana was really on the low side. There was no shortcut to building mana, so they just had to keep at it. The boy beat his chest and happily said that he would do his best. With a happy smile, the lady gave him a chain bracelet, telling him to take this. It was an item that helped with mana breathing and keeping their condition stable. The boy had not expected the sweet gift. He did not know if he should accept something like this. There was no need for the boy to feel pressured. It was just an F-rank practice item. It did not cost much to make, and it was not a big deal that she was giving this to him. The boy was excited and happy, saying that he would make good use of it. The class was over, so it was time for him to hurry along now. The boy could not believe the unexpected score that he had gotten, and he smiled with joy at the bracelet he held. As he was walking home from practice, he could not help but pause when he saw a lady lingering around near the wall. It was a dark-haired girl with laser-red eyes. She greeted Kim Seonwoo, and he wondered why she was even talking to him. She had made such a big deal about not speaking to him before, but now he seemed worthy enough to talk to. She was the one who told him not to talk to her ever again. She clearly remembered that, and she was clearly pissed that he was even reminding her. At any rate, she had heard that the loser had somehow joined the same group as Lee Sejin this time. The boy asked how she even knew that. She just scoffed that he was very clearly clinging to the thighs of the top student like a shameless leech. It was too bad, because the first place for this exam was going to be hers this time, so he should wake up from that dream. It seemed that she had come all this way just to poke fun at him. The girl turned away and scoffed, stomping and leaving. That was truly all she had come to say. What an aging tsundere. The boy could not believe it and wondered why she was touchy all the time. Later, on Thursday morning, a few of the students had gathered outside the dungeon entrance, and our dude raced over with excitement, happy that he had made it in time. There was the shining hero who was also happy to see him. It was the first time that all of the team members would be gathering in person, so it was best for them to do their best this semester. Everyone agreed that they would work hard and do their best, much to the hero's joy. However, there was always that one guy who tried to make a big deal out of everything, and he scoffed, saying that their team was kind of weird. They had got together with the top student and the very last of the class. The main character was wondering if that was supposed to be some kind of jab at him, or if the idiot just did not know how to talk. It was very clearly a jab, and that piece of nonsense was jabbing even more, asking the loser of their class to actually pull his weight during this exam. Alright, That was very rich of this dude who was barely a memory in this class. He had the nerve to tease the brunette for not being able to fire a single spell during the last test. No one could even remember this guy's name. Xianwu could not care less about some loser who was making jabs at him, and neither did some other guy who quickly jumped in to defend him. The other guy said that it did not matter if the class clown had failed so hard in the first exam since Xianjun was the one who brought him along, so he was fine with it. Since the hero brought him, then the hero would carry him. It was that easy. It was very unfortunate that our dude's defense team was made up of a dude who was clearly just trying to ride on Seojin's coattails. He started to wonder if there was even anyone useful on the team. Well, there was at least Yoon Hae-young. Her big moment in the story was still a long way off, but at least she was actually useful. She was happily asking the hero if he had slept well. The boy was wondering if it was because he had joined. The team that the hero had formed was completely different from the one he had formed last time in the story. Yoo Hae-young was one thing, but he wondered if the rest of this group would really be okay for this test. There were not a lot of heavy hitters around after all. As they walked, someone in front of the gate caught everyone's attention. It seemed to be a teacher, and now he would explain the day's dungeon exploration. This class would run twice in the morning and the afternoon. Since it would be the first day, they would only explore the basement level 1. Next, he would explain how their dungeon exploration score would be calculated. First, they would be measured by their dungeon clearing speed. The faster they cleared through difficulties, the more bonus points they would get. Second, the rank difference adjustment score. The more low-ranked teammates they had compared to their rank, the more points that they personally earned. The final contribution was, of course, the most important. This artificial dungeon used a special contribution system. This meant that they would get extra points based on how much they contributed to their team. Above all, they had to prioritize safety. Then the teacher checked if all the students listening to him understood the rules. They yelled that they indeed understood. Alright, if all of that was properly established, then it was time for the teams to enter the dungeon. Most of the kids were so hyped, and the others encouraged them to have some fun in there. The monitoring room was full of teachers keeping an eye on the students. They were not joking about safety first, and they would make sure that every single member of the dungeon would succeed. Teacher Jang was also there, and he waved, saying that he had come right after sending the kids in. The other teacher had been waiting for Mr. Jang to get there. They had to place their best on which team would get the highest score, though they did have to pick different teams for it to be a proper bet. Everyone was going to bet on Yuera's team. Most of the teachers had indeed picked Yuera's team, so it did not look like betting would do any good this time. However, the spectacled teacher said that there was clearly a way for them to bet. She beamed and said that she was going to put her money on Group 3, the one that had Lee Seojin. She was plenty convinced that his team would be able to do pretty well, actually. The teachers were in disbelief, of course. They knew the teacher was just being nice. Even if both Seojin and Ara packed their teams with low rankers for the bonus points, they had both done that completely differently. Seojin's team was pretty shaky and filled mostly with enhancement types. There was a limit to what the boy could do alone, and he could not carry the weight of all of those pathetic people on his team. The teacher with glasses admitted that this was true. Enhancement specialists were built one-on-one, so without backup, it was hard for them to handle groups of enemies. Now, if they looked over at Yuara, whose speciality was wide area magic, she had already reached the middle of the first floor in the dungeon raid. That girl was moving pretty fast when it came to clearing speed. Even so, the teacher giggled and said that she still believed in a bottom ranker uprising. So, they would all see who would actually win this bet. At the end of the day, it was her funeral if she lost, so everyone was just going to accept it and see where this took her. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the hero was progressing as usual. He charged ahead, taking down lots of monsters who came to attack them. Slowly and surely, they advanced through the dungeon, felling monsters as they progressed down. They were making great progress so far. So much progress that most of the others in the team barely had to do anything. Lee Seojin fought really well. The happy coattail riders were really fine with just hanging around in the back while the other boy led them to victory. There had to be a limit to how shameless a person could be. They were already halfway through, and they had barely had to lift a finger. As they continued, they wondered who the first floor boss would be. No one was sure, but they figured the boss of the first floor would probably be some kind of trash mob. They were busy gossiping and guessing if it would be a trash rat or a dog or something. Even if they wanted to underestimate their opponent, the girl was wary. After all, it was still a boss, and it would be as strong as a boss. Then, Haeyoung turned to Seonwoo and asked what he thought it would be. Well, he'd already done this whole exam before, so he told her that a giant wolf was going to show up. Now that was a bold claim to make. Immediately, the bully in the group tried to poke fun at him and asked how he would know that a giant wolf was going to show up. The boy was not about to argue or reveal that he knew more than he let on, but he just said that he had his ways. A giant wolf was going to show up, so they should be prepared. He had been here and done this many times before, unless this part of the exam had changed. Of course, that shameless bully just scoffed at him and called him a compulsive liar. It really made Xianwu want to beat that trash up. That jerk could believe him or not, and the bully said that he did not believe the clown at all. In fact, he was going out of his way to be annoying on purpose, and it took all of our dude's willpower just to resist reacting to that filthy piece of trash. The hero laughed and told his teammates not to fight now. He wanted them to keep moving through this dungeon as fast as possible. So, the fighting calmed down, and they kept walking. Before they progressed further, someone asked them to stop. It was the hero and the team who wondered why they were stopping now. The bully jerk even teased that the top of the class was scared. That was hardly the case. There was something on the floor in front of them. They all looked forward, and sure enough, there was a large magic circle on the floor. They had no idea what kind of magic circle it was, but it would likely activate something as soon as they walked through it. The other students were hesitant because they could sense the danger from the magic circle. They worried that the teachers would throw something really dangerous at them when they were just students. Xianwu came a little closer and bent to study it, though the hero warned him to be a little careful. They did not know what could come out of it. The boy said that he was fine. He was just taking a look at the runes and stuff like that. He studied it carefully, trying to remember why a magic circle would appear on the first floor. From what he could tell, it was not anything major, just a simple barrier. However, there had to be a reason a barrier would be here at this point of the test. Of course, the clown recognized it because he had seen this exact same barrier trigger in his previous life. He stretched out his hand and touched the barrier that surrounded the little magic circle. They could all clearly see the shifting magic of barrier air. Then he turned to look at them very pointedly. The bully was very annoyed that the clown was correct, and he muttered that he knew that too. Alright, since all of that was established, they could not pass like this. The coattail rider wondered if they would have to turn back. It would cut their time in half, and there was no other way through. The hero prepared his weapon, deciding to just cut through the barrier with his sword. He got ready as he summoned his magic, his power growing and glowing, and he charged at the barrier in front of him. The others who watched were excited, thinking that it would surely work. However, only a small dent had been made in the barrier. They had been so close. The others had really hoped that would work. The hero sighed and wondered if they could do it with the right approach. It seemed that it was now the bully's time to shine. The boy smirked and said that he was a support-type fighter after all, so he just needed a little time. He bent before the magic circle and started generating his magic. The bully touched on the magic circle, and it looked like he was actually going to be useful to this group for once. However, something was not working. Oh, how embarrassing. This was pretty complicated, and he realized it was going to take a while for him to solve this problem. Like 40 minutes too, even if he tried his best to hurry up. 40 minutes was crazy. Our dude grabbed his hand immediately. If he was going to spend all of that time trying to fix one problem, then it was time to try some other ideas. The class clown said that he would just break it. A crazy statement from Xianwu, who was seen as the weakest member of the group. The bully, of course, was not having it and tried to challenge Kim Xianwu. The clown ignored the bullying entirely because they were wasting time. He placed his hand on the circle on the ground and got busy as he put some work into it. The unique trait, Outsider's Benefits, was activating. The magical formula of the barrier was decoded, and it was pulled up before our dude for him to read. A collection of magical characters that he could rearrange and decode. Since our dude was so good at reading, he easily got the gist of what he was seeing in front of him. Once he rearranged the right letters, he tapped the circle in the right way, and it glowed. The barrier dissolved right in front of the team. It felt good when the deemed useless one was able to solve a problem that the bully insisted would take 40 minutes. The clown was done in like 5. Happily, the brunette turned to his team and said that he had won it. Even the hero was surprised that it had really worked and was very fast too. The bully was in such shambles that he could not think of a thing to say. The protagonist Lee Sojin was now quite astonished by him. In fact, the protagonist's interest in him had increased. Our dude could not help but smile. Now that the protagonist's interest in him had gone up again, our bro got a reward of 5,000 points for his hard work. It seemed this relationship was benefiting my way more than the 5,000 points. Even our dude was stunned. He now had an interest level system and the protagonist's interest had been stroked all the way to level 1. Suddenly, there was the sound of great chaos ahead of them and the echoing sound of a large paw hitting the ground. Just as our dude had predicted, the big boss had emerged, and it was, of course, a giant wolf. The boys and their one girl all stared at that terrifying creature, and the boss stalked forward, growling and drooling as it targeted the boys before them. The co-tailer was beyond impressed now. The class clown had been right about the boss too. It was a big wolf, just as he had said before. The large creature charged right at the hero, but the hero was ready and stood to fight the beast. The wolf roared and attacked, but the protagonist's eyes glowed a brilliant gold, and he sliced through the big boss creature in front of him. His attack was merciless and immediate. The hero had a different look on his face when he was fighting monsters. Even though he was a pretty good guy, He also loved the praise, and he beamed, blushing as his teammates praised him for his good job. He had taken down the boss in one swing like it was any regular mob. The door opened immediately, and the students cheered, happy that it was over. They came out of the dungeon, and the teacher congratulated Group 3. They were in second place for week 1. The hero was in shock and asked who was first. Of course, Group 7 was in first. They had cleared the dungeon 30 minutes faster. Of course, that was Uara's team. The others could not believe it. Uara was truly a monster. She had beaten through the dungeon in 4 hours and 11 minutes. They could not believe that was even possible. They were only 2 minutes ahead of third place. At this rate, they were going to get overtaken pretty fast. Well, the number of useless people in the group definitely did not help. Still, thanks to Xianwu, they had been able to take second and not third. The hero happily smiled at the class clown, still grateful for his assistance, even if they came in second place. The class clown could not help but blush at that. It seemed our guy also liked praise. If he had not removed that barrier so fast, then they would be even further down and stuck in a really bad place. The hero sulked that he had been the one who dropped the ball. They should have secured first for sure if he had only been faster at clearing the dungeon. The only girl on the team protested that assessment. They had only gotten this far because of the hero on their team. Besides, it was just the first week on the first floor. Their run was not over yet, so the main character told the hero to cheer up. They could still turn things around, but the rest of the team members had to start pulling their weight around here a bit more. As they started to head back, someone called out to the student Xianwo. The boy turned in surprise and noticed that the support-type instructor was looking at him. The teacher had come to make a proposal to him. The boy wondered what sort of proposal was being made, and the support teacher asked the kid to transfer to a major in support immediately. Now this was a shocking request. Our boy immediately said no. Obviously, she was not having it. She could not believe that little brat was going ahead to reject him without even hearing the terms. He should just listen to her first. With her authority, she could offer him a special talent scholarship of 50 million won. Now that was interesting. However, it was not something that could move our boy away from the flashiness of manifestation. She found no takers. The teacher was so upset, and one of the other students had to admit that it was crazy to reject 5 million scholarship. They had to check if he was out of his mind. The boy sucked at manifestation anyway, so switching majors should not be such a huge deal. Anyone else would take such a deal and transfer immediately. The other weaklings around him admitted that they would switch teams too. Someone then asked if he truly was not switching. Our guy looked up and sure enough there was his number 1 hater. The girl was nearby again, and she pointed out that special talent status came with way more perks than just a scholarship. Everyone was surprised that Uara had taken an interest in this conversation. The boy smiled and said that he appreciated the talk from everyone. But he was a manifestation type, no matter how many people tried to stop him. He was not about to change or turn tail when he loved manifestation so much. The girl could not believe the blind confidence that the boy had. Later at school, time passed and the talented first-year student was just casually walking through the halls. She paused when she saw someone also walking around the halls, wondering who that was. She paused and said hello, almost instantly recognizing the class clown. It was Senior Kim Shinuk and she said hello. Obviously, his name was Xianwu, so he corrected her immediately. She gasped and acted like she had gotten that wrong by accident, but he could already guess that was on purpose. The girl wanted to know why her senior was cleaning the halls like a cheap servant. Well, it was dirty, so he had just done it. When people had hands and they saw dirt, they tended to clean it. That was what good people did. The girl giggled and laughed, saying that the senior was so nice. She happily waved and told him to keep up the good work. Of course, deep down inside, she thought it was such a pointless thing to do. Our dude had now unlocked the fairy housekeep achievement, and he had gained 1,000 points as a reward. This was great. It was not like the boy could actually tell them that he had worked so hard at cleaning the halls, just so that he could unlock something as silly as the fairy housekeeper achievement. Anyway, now that his cleaning was all done, he was going to take the bucket and put it away. However, someone had noticed the boy doing some cleaning, and he smiled with pride. Back in class, the teachers taught the students about all the different types of monsters. There were humanoids, animals, flying monsters, and all sorts of things. The most dangerous of all, of course, were the mains. Then, the teacher asked if anyone knew why the mains were so dangerous. Our bookworm took the past Bowden and explained that, except when they willingly dropped their disguise and were on the verge of going berserk, mains were almost impossible to tell apart from humans. The teacher smiled and said that this was correct. Mains fed on human blood, and they controlled monsters. They were the root of all evil, and they had already deeply infiltrated their society. Due to the fact that there was not a lot of physical difference between humans and mains, it was almost impossible for civilians to identify mains without any equipment. However, in the situations that he mentioned earlier, the main eyes would turn black. Our dude listened to the lecture about mains, and his eyes widened. Right, this weekend was when the episode of the first main appearance would happen. It was the story where Lee Seojin, despite being a student, would defeat a man and get attention again. Seojin would handle it just fine on his own anyway, so there was little reason for the main character to interfere in this part of the story. However, considering how disastrous the Krua's incident had gone, he would check in just in case there was any danger around him. If he wanted to go out with Seojin, he would need a bit more money, and he wondered what to do. Later that day, at the training center, the boy was busy working on some of his mana training. This was essential for him to upgrade his skills after all. A bit of meditation helped grow the man that was already within him into a growing pool of green that circled through his whole body. As the boy sat and meditated and worked hard, his mana slowly increased by 0.02. The Great Nature's Blessing effect granted an additional 0.03 mana. Great Nature's Blessing proficiency had increased by 12%. All that training, whenever he had a spare moment, was finally paying off. The boy had now built up quite a bit of mana. Suddenly, the boy paused when he saw an odd pop-up window. The Great Nature's Blessing had been upgraded to rank 2. That was great. The active effect of the trait, Great Nature's Blessings, had been unlocked. They could now soothe Great Nature's heart. The boy beamed. He had known that buying Great Nature's Blessing was the right call. Even though the cooldown was long, the mana recovery speed increased massively for 1 minute. He could not freely use it whenever he needed it. Thanks to this, he was built of the manifestation type. He recalled the teacher's call, asking him to transfer to the support department immediately, and he washed that off like the bad juju that it was. The boy had no intention of abandoning his clear-cut passion for manifestation. Honestly, breaking barriers was just him riding the outsider's benefits. He was not cut out for support. He could not actually create barriers either. Support was completely out of his league. Still, the truth was that losing that scholarship money kind of stung. Currently, his bank account is suffering, and he was truly dreaming of transferring. He just would not work well on that side of the department. It made sense that he was broke. Most students were broke. Well, he picked himself up from the floor. There had to be a way to make some quick cash. He had been going into dungeons hunting monsters, and selling dropped items was way too dangerous. Otherwise, there was the option of climbing the tower. He could handle the lower difficult towers, but he was still a student, and he would get wiped out once he so much as touched any higher floors. Our dude was in a very difficult position. Since he was still a minor, he could not get a license to go to any significantly higher floors. Our boy rubbed at his head as he considered the options available to him. Suddenly, he got a pretty good idea. The sky shone with bright stars, and the teachers talked about the really admirable student that they had seen in the dungeon that day. The trash student Kim Seon-woo from the second year was proving to be more than just trash after all. He had come to school early in the morning to clean too. The other teachers admitted that the boy focused well during theory class as well, and he answered actively in class. His attitude to studying was excellent, and it really motivated the teachers to do other jobs. The teacher with the glasses, of course, was happy to hear people singing praises about her student, and she beamed that this was just how manifestation-type kids were. Someone had tried to poach her precious student, but they had failed woefully, and she threw her head back and laughed. It seemed the lady could be malicious in her own ways. Of course, the teacher had always believed that her precious student Seon-woo was not the type to fall for something like that. Anyway, it was such a relief to have a student who was so diligent and upstanding these days. Most students were entirely focused on nothing but power and money. However, our dude was not really a student now, was he? The class clown was beaming today, feeling like an absolute genius. He had achieved the student beloved by the teacher's achievement, and he had gained 2,000 points. This was amazing. He had barely even been trying to get this achievement, but it was his now. He was so happy to have extra points now. He immediately entered the point into the shop, activating the search function. The price to purchase the item that he wanted was the 1,000 points. Now, he was going to get his money's worth and make some great cash too. The beloved student so loved by his teachers was now cackling madly at the back of the class. It was making the other students feel very concerned. Later, on Saturday morning, someone in gear marched out to meet another who was dressed in uniform. The man in uniform stretched out his hand to ask for a mage license. The person reached into his pocket and pulled out the license. It seemed there was a visitor to the tower. It was clearly our dude dressed in the shoddiest and fakest disguise ever known to man. He just slicked his hair back, wore some fake glasses and called himself Kim Jinwoo, age 25. And it was really amazing that the person in the ID was dressed in the exact same way as the idiot standing beside the security guard. The guard looked at the card, and then he ran it through his checker. It seemed that the student had not at all prepared for the chance that there would be an actual verification item at the gate. However, much to everyone's surprise, the seat-rank mage Kim Jinwoo, who was 25 years old, was somehow confirmed as a legit hunter. That had to be some kind of crazy glitch. The security politely greeted him and handed him back his card. No way, security was really lax around dungeon areas. The boy had known that he would not get caught, but he had still been super nervous. Wow. Bro really trusted in a faulty and corrupt system just to get access to what he wanted. This was the new identity that he bought from the points shop a few days ago. So, apparently, he could just buy an identity, too, from his silly little shop. That was crazy. He had even been given the opportunity to set the details of his new identity as he liked. A mage license could be issued together with it, too. The price was, of course, 10,000 points, so that was what he had spent all of that money on. Now that he had the points he needed, he got the fake identity card immediately, and now he was sneaking into low-tier dungeons. The mage licenses in this world were pretty special, and they contained a unique magic formula so they could never be forged, except through a magical cheat system, like the one that he was blatantly using right now. Plus, he had gotten these amazing color-changing glasses on, so his disguise was pretty flawless. Now, he would go ahead to clear the tower and go straight to the Han River. Lee Seojin's fight with the main would start at 9:30, and he needed to be close by when that went down. Our dude hurried into the dungeon, admiring the nice decor around the area. Kim Jinwoo was welcomed to the Tower of Proof, and he was currently only allowed up to the 27th floor, given his current power level. The boy stepped forward, and the tower asked him which floor he would like to go to. Our dude was ambitious, but he was not an idiot. He asked to go to the 10th floor. Unfortunately for him, the 10th floor had already been cleared. Even if he cleared it again, the reward quality would be lower. However, the main character surprisingly did not mind. He would go to the 10th floor anyway. He had a different goal anyway. The portal was pretty convenient as transport devices were found in every tower. There were several types of towers in this world, and the monster's strength and the difficulty of the traps were mostly determined by the level. In the side story of the original, the Tower of Proof, they had both entered the 10th floor. It was a place that most guilds would avoid because of its unusual difficulty. The brunette appeared there and found himself facing a strange wolf-like creature with many eyes. He stepped inside the tower, and the creature growled at him. Of course, it immediately charged, but the main character was ready, smacking that thing with a good blast of mana right in the face. The monsters that appeared were usually on the weaker side, but they made for good practice points. The main character had now achieved the extra title of the first hunt, and he had gained 1,000 points as a reward. The floor was packed with traps and great difficulty magic formulas. This was practically a tailor-made tower for him. At this rate, he had plenty of time to clear it. Alright, our dude prepped himself, and he was ready to keep going. Later, near the Han River, people were going about and doing their daily business. There were so many people there, and the hero was hanging out with his best friend. It was not even a festival, but so many people had gathered around the area. Since they were here, the best friend excitedly wanted to take a picture with his friend. The hero was a little hesitant about taking a picture, but his best friend insisted that this was an important part of making memories. The hero did not buy it, but since his friend was asking, he did not see why not. So, they came close together, and they prepared to take a picture together. As those two were busy having fun, our dude had knocked down the latest monster. He had even been able to get a magic crystal. It seemed that luck was on his side today. Well, that would cover the ride money, so it was time for him to get going. Carefully, the brunette walked around, searching for something that should be close by, his hands running over the surface of the door before him. Sure enough, he touched on a bit of gold before him and beamed. He had found what he was looking for. The gold on the door began to expand and sparkle as he placed his hand down on it, and his eyes widened when he saw the change happening before him. The main character had achieved the Barrier Breaker achievement, and he had thus earned 2,000 points as a reward. The door opened wide before him, and he had now entered the hidden floor of the Tower of Proof, the inner world. The Tower of Proof focused on him as mystical mana filled the air. The room that he had just walked into was rather nice too, a very beautiful looking area. He had now achieved the Mystery Explorer achievement, and he gained 5,000 points as a reward. Our dude grinned because he had hit the bullseye, and he had found exactly what he was looking for. Oh, Challenger of the Tower of Proof. The statue before him spoke and made a request. She wanted him to prove himself. An immense aura suddenly blasted from the statue and hit our dude full force. He groaned as he struggled to deal with that immense pressure. Such strong heat directed right at him was indeed a lot. Suddenly, there was a lot of giggling as the flowers soared around him. Then there was the flutter of wings, and little fairies made themselves known, laughing and kikiing around him. Flower fairies had appeared. They were only C-rank monsters, so they were not that strong. A bunch of tiny flying C-rank monsters sounded like they could be very troublesome, though. Immediately, these seemingly sweet fairies suddenly bared their teeth, and they flew right at our dude with the intent to cause harm. These monsters were not very strong, but they were the crazy type that would lose it the moment they saw a human. Fortunately, they were tiny, and they flew. So Xianwu got to work blasting them out of the air as fast as he could before they were able to close the distance. It would be way too annoying having to fight those ants in close range after all. He didn't want to shoot his foot by accident. When it came to taking down these annoying little bugs, speed was everything. At least one of them would get hit. Instantly, he fired shot after shot at the little flower monsters. taking them down with merciless efficiency. One by one, they faltered and fell until the other fairies got spooked. The boy summoned up a magic circle because he was not even done just yet. Even if he defeated every fairy, he would not be able to clear this floor. The statue had asked him to prove himself, but that was a little difficult. His individuality was not something that he could prove by just taking down all the fairies. So, he activated the unique trader off the outsider's benefits and decoded the magical formula before him. The formula popped up on the screen, once again like a god-given cheat code, and our dude read through what he had to do. All he had to do was prove himself after all, and he was going to do just that. The magic was read all through the garden, and he read the secret to the room that was highlighted in all the blue mana around. It was time for Xianwu to fulfill the room's request, and he grinned with excitement. His individuality was the same as decoding this formula. It was every ability that he had gained as an outsider in this world. So, using his special power, he proved himself and thus achieved the recognition by the Tower of Proof achievement. The boy gained 10,000 points as a reward. The garden cleared away, and he found himself before the pillar of two female statues standing together. The Tower of Proof bestowed its blessing upon the main character, and the adaptive trait, Proof of Tower D, had been added. The gifts that came with clearing this level included the Red Dragon's Soul, the Magic-Imbued Book, the Sacred Herb Seed, and 5 Sacred Herbs. Our dude was also blessed with plus 5 mana, a 20% mana recovery speed, and spell power by 10%. This was great news to Xianwu, who cheered at these results. The tower congratulated the main character. There was a huge spark that shone through the environment, and a firework exploded, telling him that he had successfully cleared the hidden floor in the inner world. The two boys who were chilling at the Han River looked up and realized that the festival was starting. Then, the hero asked his best friend to check something out. It was the photo that they had taken earlier, but there was something else that the hero was pointing out. Behind them, there had been a dangerous-looking man who had watched them with dark eyes. The best friend gasped with shock when he saw what his friend identified. Those eyes, there was no way, and yet it was true. There was a mane among them right now. As they looked around, they soon discovered the mane walking around like a zombie from an apocalypse movie. No matter how things seemed, that thing was definitely not a human. The clock chimed, and our bro realized that it was almost 9:30. The main character was walking around, and he could clearly see it, so where the heck was the hero supposed to slay the monster? However, for some reason the hero was late. The wait was driving our dude crazy, and he wondered if he would have to step in. However, this was a major event and a no-name loser like him was not supposed to complete it. If the hero did not show up now, he would end up like all those other losers in transmigration novels that ended up becoming the accidental protagonist because they had done too much. That being said, this was still a monster disguised as a human walking around in public. If it were left alone, that bad boy was going to cause a lot of serious damage, so naturally, the boy found himself facing a very intense dilemma. Xianwu did not want to mess up the plot, but there was already an idiot passerby heading straight for the main to check if it needed help. That tossed his opportunity to be an onlooker right out of the window. He had to do something, or that idiot would die. The main character was horrified, but he was not moving near fast enough. Blood splattered the grass, and the poor good Samaritan had only himself to blame for being an actual decent person. His eyes widened in horror as that merciless creature gutted him. It truly gutted him, had its long claws inside of his chest and everything. The mane was kinda hot, but that was hardly the point right now. Its formerly black eyes had gone red, and it tossed aside the body of the poor first victim, splattering blood all over the scene. The poor trash spat blood as he flew, bleeding and regretting a lot of his life decisions. Now that it had tossed the trash, the mane suddenly had the great idea to tear off its shirt and roar, like it was the king of the festival. Maybe it was because it did have a nice set of abs to back up that idea. All the blood and the roaring had definitely caught the eye of the other people who had just been enjoying the festival, and it was at this point that they understood that shit had just gotten real. There happened to be one idiot lady standing way too close to that monster, and she was frozen in fear because she knew that she was dead meat. The time for standing and observing was over. It was time for Xianwu to do more than just watch this madness go down. The poor people around had started to panic. There was a mane among them, and it was very clearly going berserk. Someone was saying that they needed to call someone and tell them that a mane was at the festival. Meanwhile, our dude finally took action with those fake glasses on his face. He rushed forward because, story or not, people came first, and a lady was about to die in front of him. He could not just keep standing back. Apparently, the hero was being delayed because he had done the responsible thing of reporting the spotted mane, and the authorities were telling him the results. After looking through the picture, they were sure that the creature was a mane. Jung Hyunsu, and an agent of the Anti-Terror Special Task Force, was the one investigating the situation. He worked for the Mage Association, and he was still asking some really dumb questions about when they had taken the picture. Yes, the picture had been taken nearby, and the agent worried because this creature had been spotted during a festival when the area was crowded. The more blood that the creature absorbed, the stronger they would get, so they had to move carefully. The hero was worried deeply about this news, but suddenly he turned when he felt an enormous bolt of power just then. The agent rushed forward because he was also thinking the same. There was no mistake about the situation. They had to get to the scene immediately. The rest of the crowd that had gathered around the main, because they did not have the common sense to run away, were wondering why a dude was running straight at the monster. Xianwu used the opportunity of the thing's distraction to toss a big orb of shiny blue and white power at it. He was going to hit the weak point at the back of the head. It seemed that his huge blast did make contact, and the creature stopped. There was a pause, and the two froze for a moment. The boy was wondering if he had really been able to get the creature. However, there was no way it would be that easy. Our dude was sweating buckets when the ugly behemoth suddenly turned with half of its face fallen apart. Now it was really ugly, and its mouth cracked into an angry grimace. This situation was really bad. It was already bad before, but now it was getting worse. The boy had not been able to destroy its brain, and now it was targeting him. He was great at fighting a few fairies on his own, but he did not want to deal with a giant roaring monster that was making its way right for him. The beast was boiling at getting hit by that weak attack, and our dude was not in the best mood either, because now he had to turn tail and run. Unfortunately, that ugly beast had no intention of letting him get away, and it leaped right at him. This was the kind of situation where the main character had to put himself first. He was planning on saving his secret move, but now he had to use it here in front of all these people. What a pain. Now, our dude activated the Great Nature's Heart, and for 1 minute, his mana recovery speed would increase by 1000%. Not a bad deal. Charging his hands full of mana, the boy knew that he might not be able to finish the creature in a minute, but he could at least half kill him. With that logic, he shot a gazillion fireballs at the annoying creature. This made the main rethink its decision to chase the guy. He had thought that he was chasing after easy prey, but easy prey was raining mana balls at him. Naturally, he was not digging the situation at all. A lot of the creature's body got fried, and it fell back, landing on its feet as more and more mana balls came soaring towards it. At this rate, it looked like the main character could take care of the situation without the protagonist's help. Then the big bad guy got into a boxing stance for some reason. Our dude grinned and told that big monster to keep trying to block him all that it wanted, because they were going to be doing this back and forth for quite some time. He pushed mana ball after mana ball, trying to at least stall the monster from attacking any more innocent people. He was going to smash its head in no matter what, or so our dude thought. Fortunately, who would appear but a hero swinging a master sword? It was amazing. The story had unfolded just like in the book, but with an extra twist. The main's head went flying, its mouth open in surprise because it had not expected an enemy to come in from the back. Xianwu's eyes widened when he saw the protagonist enter the scene. It sure had taken Xiujin long enough to get here. The main was cut into pieces within an instant, and the agent they had contacted sighed in relief now that the situation had been resolved. Jung Hyunsu, the agent with the Special Task Division, stepped forward, and he thanked the random stranger who had aided in making sure that thing would end much more easily. The man even asked to see the dude's mage license for a moment, as he needed to verify the man's identity and issue a reward. Fortunately, Xianwu had a fake license, so he just offered that one up. The agent stared in surprise that a C rank had been able to hold on this long. He had thought for sure that he would at least be a B rank. As the agent spoke with the mysterious mage, the other boys from school were also watching in their direction. Now, this made the brunette a little nervous, because he was worried that the hero would recognize him. He had used magic to change the color of his eyes, so hopefully the protagonist would not notice. However, Lee Seojin and Shin Youngjin were standing quite close to the scene. He could not believe those two jerks had shown up at this time near the end of the final scene. He'd had to step in and do their work when this should have been their job. It was a good thing that he had come, or more people would have died. However, the hero was staring at our dude from across the room. It felt like his imagination, but he could swear that he had seen that shady guy with the glasses somewhere before. The boy just looked very familiar. The hero stepped forward, and the main character started sweating. Seojin asked if, by any chance, this strange hunter knew someone by the name of Kim Seonwoo. The hero's memory capacity sure was incredible, but that was hardly what would help them right now. That's it for this episode. Until next time.